Money FM 89.3, the best of Saturday mornings. Wide World on Money FM 89.3.
Joining us in the studio now, Nitin Goyal, who is the author of The Restored Organization. It's all about 6 ways to humanize workplace cultures, transforming results, basically how people and results can thrive together and build cultural capital. This is a lot to unpack here. Nitin, welcome back to the show. Great to see you again. This is a meaty topic.
Yes, thanks, Glenn. Thanks for having me, and it's nice to be back in the studio.
Yeah.
About 2 years ago, about the same time, I was here. But obviously this time as an author. So there's a little bit of pressure. Yeah. And yes.
Congrats on the book. And
thank you.
And so what is the Restored Organization? Take us through this.
So the whole idea, Glenn, started around COVID time, right? I realized there was a lot going on, like everybody else. But Sebastian, who's also co-authored the book with me, we both started to talk about how disengaged people were, right? And obviously COVID was a lot to do with it. But both of us also started unpacking this whole idea that we have worked with quite a few toxic bosses and been in quite a bit of toxic cultures in our careers. I've had the joy of working with 4 toxic bosses in my career. And
you're going to start making better choices.
I've got to ask, where? Were they in Singapore? Were they overseas?
It was all over.
Okay.
So couple in the U.S. and then some in Singapore. I'm always grateful. I'm still grateful for those experiences because it really teaches you a lot. It really helps you build that resilience muscle and just say, hey, you know what? Going forward, this is what I'm not going to do with organizations and people. But we both started talking about this idea that, why are we feeling differently as compared to a lot of other people? And I think the experiences we had over the career that we had, I think that had a cascading effect in terms of our own mental health and how we were showing up at work. And then we informally started talking to friends of friends and ex-colleagues and some other people and realized there's literally a red thread with other people also experiencing a lot of those same things. So we said instead of just complaining, which a lot of people would do, let's just turn this into something positive. And just, the idea was just to create a movement, a community to help organizations, restore their workplaces where people can be more engaged and can really drive better results. Right.
Well, the stats back you up. I mean, according to the 2024 Gallup poll, 62% of employees are disengaged from work, costing the global economy $8.9 trillion. So let's start there, Nitin. Why? Why are they disengaged?
Yeah, so there's a lot to do with managers to begin with, right? So we always say that people don't leave organizations, they leave bad managers. And I think if you look at the context of today, change has always been a constant, right? That we've always gone through lots of changes. But there's a different kind of change we are experiencing right now. There is obviously socioeconomic change, there is geopolitical change, but there's also that change in technology, which is happening at a much, much faster pace. Change was at a rate of 183% over the last 3 years. Last year alone, it was at a pace of about 33%. And my guess would be just this first half of the year, it has been at a pace of about 50% or more, right? So I feel that we are not spending time enough to really create the mindsets required in leaders and in managers to really navigate and really lead that change successfully. And as a result, if the managers don't get that right, the leaders don't get that right, I think the teams which are under those people don't get it as well, right? And so it leads to a lot of disengagement where they don't feel a sense of purpose or fulfillment coming to work. And people are being asked to do a lot more with less. Right, there's a lot of pressure for results, especially in this last few years, just after COVID, as people have been coming out, and I think there's a lot people are doing, and so mental health is also taking a toll, right? Yeah. So it's not about balance anymore; it's about integration, and again, comes back to managers and leaders, because if they don't role model that well, it does lead to a lot of that disengagement as well, because people are just showing up for work.
We're talking to Nitin Goyal, the author of The Restored Organization. Let's get into it. You have something called the Flower Framework, a 6-petal strategy, very clever on that, talking about how to restore that trust and empathy and inclusion at work, taking it away from the toxic environment to something that is better for everyone. Tell us about the framework. What is it and the different steps? But is this something that has to be driven by the boss or the leadership, or is it something that can be a ground-up sort of approach?
Yeah,
tell us first about the structure.
Yeah, so I think when so the book is very research-driven. So what we did is we interviewed more than 100 global leaders, organizations globally, and just started to connect this red thread of, at the end of it, what kind of cultures would drive true engagement and really results. And it is a polarity of dealing with people and results at the same time. And most leaders really find it challenging to actually balance that polarity and deal with that polarity successfully. So based on what we heard from people, that was the premise of the framework, right? And you rightly said, Glenn, it has these 6 petals where we said these are 6 subcultures which need to be addressed in order to truly restore the organization. And I didn't talk about the word or the terminology, restoration, but just like we look at art restoration or building restoration or even nature restoration, we said that from a culture point of view, we need to look at organizations' culture also being restored.
So the 6: fulfilling culture, listening culture, ownership culture, well-being culture, enterprising culture.
And results-based culture.
Results-based culture.
Yeah. So there is the first 4 are quite a bit focused on the people side, as you see, right? So flow, it really talks about what can I do? What can leaders do in order to really lead teams and everybody in the organization from their own point of view? So it's self, teams, and organization. And the ER is really focused on the business side of things, right? So you don't get the flow right, you won't get ER. So if you're too much on the people side, that's where we become too nice, where people say, you know what, we have a very family-oriented culture in our organization. Well, there's no accountability then, right? There's no focused on results. You will become too much on the results side, then that's where the toxicity starts to happen because it's all about numbers, right? We don't care about whether you are feeling a sense of fulfillment. We don't care about listening to you to understand or even about your well-being because we're just focused on results.
Yeah.
So it is it's not really a linear framework. You can focus based on an assessment, and we have an organization assessment where you can really understand where the gaps are, where you need to do well in terms of driving results in the organization, and that's where we focus on, right? Based on, is it results, is it listening, and so forth.
Well, let's start with the employees. Your first one, fulfilling culture. Create an environment where work has purpose and meaning. I suppose a listener might be tuning and saying, well, that seems obvious. And what does it actually mean? Does it mean a few bean bags and a few extra vending machines and a pool table?
Yeah.
What does that?
A nice coffee machine.
Yeah, and all the the barista comes
and
in
a foosball table.
Right,
of course.
What does it actually mean?
Yeah, and I think that's the myth sometimes, is those kind of things would really add to fulfillment and add to people feeling good. But it's not about people feeling good. It's actually about, are they truly driven to drive results better for the organization? Fulfillment is really about, what is your own sense of purpose? What really brings meaning to you, right? And good organizations, so each of those chapters, each of the petals has 3 elements which we are focused on, and each element has 3 strategies. So it's a 3x3 kind of a framework, and each of them have examples of organizations which are doing it well. So for example, Unilever is one of the examples in the fulfillment chapter or the fulfillment culture. And Unilever has, since 2018, done a really good job with their purpose workshop, where they have really spent time with people in the organizations to distill this idea of what is purpose for you and aligning it to Unilever's purpose, right? So I think that creates a little bit of that fulfillment in people that the organization does care.
Like they care about the people,
they do,
but also they want to align with the organization's
culture.
goals.
So that's the whole idea of the polarity, because it's not just about your purpose, but it's also like we want to make sure that's aligned. So every day when I come to work at Unilever, I probably have that clarity of my own purpose, and that gives in more fulfillment, and as a result, it drives better engagement and results.
Fantastic. Now I'll switch it to the employer. The cynical, maybe Kiasu employer might be listening to this saying, that's great. I want to know my employee's purpose, but I also need my employee to hit this sales target.
I got to sell widgets.
And if he doesn't, I'm going to have to replace him with someone who does.
Yep.
How do you get that balance?
Yeah, and I think it's a lot to do with clarity, right? So what we don't do a good job is with giving a sense of clarity of results to begin with in the first place, right?
Right.
So a lot of leaders just say, okay, you're expected to do this and stuff, but are not communicating with clarity in terms of what those results look like. So that's a starting point, right? So that clarity of results, what do we need to drive, right? Then I think looking at what mindsets are needed, right, in terms of people, skills, and mindsets to actually align to those results is key as well. But I think it's because there's a lot of ambiguity which people are in, and as a result, they're like, okay, I'm just expected to do so much, but yet I'm not delivering results, right? So I think it's the end of it. It all comes back to clarity from that ambiguity or that unclear or ambiguous environment we are in. So as much clarity.
You said you spoke to 100 different leaders, and you mentioned Unilever. Do you have any specific examples of where they've managed that? Because I can imagine a big company, 50 employees, 100 employees. That's 100 different meanings and purposes that must somehow be satisfied or satiated, but at the same time fulfill the company's overall objectives, sales targets, whatever. Yeah. Can you do that? Can you really bring all of those people together and make them all happy?
Yeah, well, happiness is always relative as well, right? So
or fulfill their purpose and meaning.
Yeah, and maybe not. I mean, I think at the end of it, and that's why you look at the other petals as well. So maybe it's not fulfillment, but maybe I'm listening to understand my employees better, right? Or I care about their well-being, meaning from a holistic well-being perspective, right? So I think that's the beauty of the petals is you don't have to just focus on fulfillment, but there could be some other things as well. The foundational drivers for a restored organization is inclusion, empathy, and trust. And trust being a big one, right? A Great Place of Work, Michael Bush, who's also written the foreword, trust is a big thing that they do in Great Place to Work as an organization. They go in and that's their driver. But trust really drives that. So leaders are really struggling in terms of really developing and really, being able to create that sense of trust with their employees. So I think that's a starting point, right? So if the trust is not there, it's going to be hard for people, no matter what you focus on in terms of the petals, to drive results or feel that sense of fulfillment.
We're talking with Nitin Goyal, the author of The Restored Organization, 6 Ways to Humanize Workplace Cultures and Transforming Results. Nitin, we don't have time to go through all 6 of the petals. First question, should employers be looking at these petals when they are hiring somebody and to see if these people will fit in to these constructs that is that a useful pre-hiring tool? And secondly, is one more that I'd like to talk about is the listening culture and how important listening is for bosses to listen to the people and people to listen to the bosses and that dynamic. So first question first, is this a diagnostic tool of somebody that might do well in the organization if they look before they hire somebody?
Yeah, good question, Glenn. And I think it is both ways, actually. I look at it from the other perspective of an employee interviewing with an organization. This book would be very handy in terms of what questions to perhaps ask from a culture point of view, right? So does the organization have a sense of fulfillment? Like, how do you create that? Or what techniques are you using in terms of listening to your employees holistically?
So you could come up with 6 really good questions right off the bat, right?
Absolutely, and AI can definitely help you craft those questions as well, right? But from an employer point of view, absolutely, I think from an onboarding point of view, it can also help them really assess, future employees coming into the the organization. But at the end of it, it is also a blueprint for an organization to drive better engagement, right? So if you're looking into looking at your engagement surveys or data points, and that's another thing which we are really lacking on, is we are not measuring culture the way it should be measured. And that's where you lose that trust with employees as well. So I think that helps because you can not just assess it, but you can also use it. It's a blueprint. It's ready to go. Wherever you feel you need to fit it in, you can use it, copy and paste, whatever. So a lot of the engagement surveys and a lot of the engagement efforts is also very, very helpful.
Yeah, interesting.
Did you come across any case studies or companies where you thought, yes, this is the one example where they're actually doing close to our 6-petal strategy?
Yeah. And interestingly, and people say we are in Singapore. So there are Singapore companies which are featured in there. Piyush Gupta, DBS, is featured in there. And, as you know, he's recently left DBS. He's also endorsed the book. And DBS is a clear-cut example of where, Piyush, when he came in, he was charged with turning DBS back around, right? So driving results was key, but he did it in a very human manner, with empathy, with trust, with inclusion, right? And I think that's very, very key, and that's the success of DBS Bank as you see it. The other example is Singtel. Singtel is also featured in the book, but has also led with inclusion, right? In terms of making sure there's inclusion, making sure there's a lot of trust built in, and again, a different sector, telecom sector. So we are seeing a few companies. Of course, you see Singapore Airlines, which is also featured, and so forth and stuff. But in Singapore itself, examples.
When you say inclusion, what does that mean? The literal inclusivity, or inclusion in terms of involving employees in discussions, dialogues, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so it's inclusion of thought. And it's inclusion of diversity as well, right?
So it's both.
So it's both. It's absolutely both. So UOB, I just had a meeting with the MD here, Ian Wong, just this week, and we talked about UOB, which is also featured in the book in the enterprising culture chapter, because UOB co-created this framework around remote working, and everybody was involved in terms of sharing their opinion and their views on how to create a remote work policy. So it was not just the leaders, there was a lot of the employees. And as a result, people feel that, hey, the organization cares about me, and they really care about my views and my opinions, and as a result, I feel included in terms of decisions which are being made.
Nitin, you've talked about some great big corporations, obviously, Singapore Airlines and Singtel, et cetera. But what about the SMEs, less than 100 employees, less than 50 employees?
Yeah.
As we know, those are by far the largest number of companies in Singapore, right? And a bedrock foundation for success in Singapore. So how does this work well in an SME context as well?
Yeah, I think so, Glenn. And just to let you know, we have featured some SMEs as well in the book as well. So it's not about just global, because to us, it's about culture at the end of it, right? So culture is people.
Versus industry or size of organization.
And stuff. So culture, it's very agnostic in terms of what industries and the size of the organization. So at the end of it, I think investing in culture, no matter what size of the organization it is, leads to better results. Right, and I think double-clicking on that culture aspect, whether it's a SME with a few people, that's people often make that mistake of redundancies and getting rid of people and stuff, where we have seen through our research, if you invest more in people during those downtimes, that long-term can lead to better results for the organization.
Brilliant. And the most important final question, where can our listeners get a brand new copy of The Restored Organization?
So the book is available here in Singapore bookstores, at Kinokuniya.
The two that are left.
Excuse me, we opened a new one yesterday.
Excellent.
Follow the news.
Excellent.
Yes, Raffles
City. We just opened a brand new, so it's this is now going to be available on all three bookstores. Popular as well, which is the second bookstore. W.H. Smith at the airports. The book is available now.
Nice.
And Amazon globally, and Barnes & Noble in the U.S. as well.
Fantastic.
Wow. Nitin Goyal, the book is The Restored Organization, 6 Ways to Humanize Workplace Cultures and Transforming Results. Thank you for being with us.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.